Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Every day in the U.S., an average of 1,239 tons of styrofoam makes it into our landfills. This is an astounding statistic. Hi, I'm Mike Lohan, Chief Marketing Officer of HOMEPS. Today I have the pleasure of presenting this business with three of my best friends, two of which, CEO Tom Sutherland and Chief Financial Officer Steve McDermott, have been some of my best friends since my first few weeks here at TCU. Last but not least, Chief Operating Officer Joel Belko has been one of my best friends since freshman year in college. We have come up with a business that we believe allows us to start a company together, a dream that we've had since the beginning of our college careers. We also believe we've designed a business that allows us to create significant value for a number of various stakeholders, including but not limited to our initial customer, the home builders themselves, the final consumer, the purchasers of the homes, the communities surrounding our business operations, and the environment. We sought out to solve two problems. The first is that 10 to 20% of America's landfills are composed of this material, styrofoam. That's incredibly unsettling when you take into consideration that a styrofoam cup, a small cup, takes over 500 years to decompose. The second problem we sought to fix was that traditional EPS home building, although very valuable and it's a great business operation, it tends to be more expensive than traditional stick framing because it's highly dependent on volatile crude oil prices. We sought to counterbalance this, the styrofoam that's in landfills, because for every ton of EPS used in home building, 67 trees are saved. For every ton of recycled EPS used instead of manufactured EPS, 22 barrels of crude oil are saved, and 2 tons of carbon emissions are reduced. This brings me to the home EPS solution. We're going to take compacted EPS taken from raw styrofoam, compress it into blocks, and then create it into pellets. Joel will talk more about the operations in a few minutes. This strategy allows us to achieve 5 major strengths. First of all, cost effectiveness. As I mentioned, EPS tends to be more expensive than traditional stick framing, specifically 6 to 7% more expensive on average, according to Dr. Rick Wegman. We also provide 40 to 70% energy savings. The discrepancy comes between warm and cold weather. Cold weather tends to save more money on energy because the EPS framework functions as an incubator to keep the warm air in and the cold air out. In warm weather, it functions as an ice chest to keep the cold air in and the warm air out. So not only are you getting framework with the product, but you're also getting insulation. The product's also exceptionally durable. As you can see in these samples, we're not dealing with the same styrofoam you see in our landfills. We're dealing with a product that's extremely durable, extremely sturdy, and is very multifunctional. It's also, as I mentioned, environmentally sustainable. And finally, a big internal strength is that with the GreenMax machine that Joel will speak of, HOMEPS controls their own value chain.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Now, the first step of our operations is to basically take the compacted waste EPS and compact it down so it can be easily transported back to our facility. So how do we do that? That's what Mike said. We mentioned the GreenMax machine. We're going to purchase 4 GreenMax machines from a manufacturer in Shanghai, who we also actually happen to have working relations with. Now, we're going to contract with 4 companies and distribution centers, such as Walmart, or Target, or Sears, or any companies that produce a large amount of waste EPS. And essentially, we're going to give them this machine, and in turn, they're going to provide us with our raw materials, with our EPS. You're probably wondering, why don't we just sell them the machine? Well, we want to maintain control of our supply base. Should they go off on their end of the contract, we can reserve the right to move the GreenMax machine to a different company or a different location. Now, what are the incentives for these companies? Well, there's no cost to them. We're going to install this machine, provide it for them for free. Their only responsibility is to make sure an employee is putting the waste EPS into the machine and compacting it. Also, we're allowed them to safely dispose of the waste EPS and also possibly meet some new environmental standards that we placed. And lastly, it provides a consistent stream of monthly revenue, which I'll get into in a second. The next step is what the GreenMax machine does is it compacts the waste EPS into blocks. These blocks are then placed on the pallets, which can then be placed in the trucks. Based on our research, we expect each supplier to produce about 1 truckload per month, which is about 15 tons. And for each truckload, we'll pay our suppliers $5,000. So this is $60,000 per year that they would otherwise not be getting. The next step is pellitizing. once the trucks reach our facility, we're going to take the blocks and put them through a machine called a pelletizer, which will break them down and compress them into little pellets that will look like one of these three pictures here on the bottom right. Now, once they're in pellet form, we can then mold them to our specifications. So the next step, we put them in our panel molds, and when they're heated and compressed, they expand and solidify to form a solid block of EPS. And basically, think of it as a popcorn kernel. When you heat it up, it expands. It's the same concept here, just a little bit more complex. And then this block is cut into 14 separate 3.5-inch thick panels. Now these panels are then ready to have the steel framing put on the outside of them and can then be transported to building sites. Now this last image just shows you kind of what our finished product would look like from cradle to grave. And with that, I'll give Tom is going to talk to us about the industry and target market.
Thank you, Joel. The new construction housing industry is expected to grow by 16.8% this year to approximately $210 billion. Now, the new construction market is comprised of two components: single-family homes and multifamily housing. Single-family homes you see is your traditional freestanding home, and your tract housing model you see in residential suburban communities. Multifamily housing is comprised of apartment complexes, retirement communities, townhomes, duplexes, and the like. Last year, about 593,000 new homes were built nationwide, and that number is expected to increase by about 15% annually over the next 5 years. Now, our primary target markets will consist of the general contractors and housing developers responsible for the construction of these single-family homes and multifamily housing structures. And we will start right here in Dallas-Fort Worth, because last year, 19,540 new homes were built in DFW, and that number as well is expected to increase by 15% annually over the next 5 years. We will start by producing enough structural insulated panels for our target markets to assemble 25 homes in 2012, and we will increase that number to 70 in 2013. Now, DFW is the 6th fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States because of its population growth and its increase in gross metropolitan product. Now, within a few hundred miles of Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston and Austin are also some of the fastest growing regions in the country, and they provide our company sufficient opportunities to expand our distribution channels. Our primary competition will consist of manufacturers for traditional stick-built framing and structural insulated panels in developed metropolitan areas. But we have advantages over our competitors. Because we are recycling styrofoam, we are able to produce these structural insulated panels in a much lower cost while maintaining the same high quality. We have a close relationship with the manufacturer of the Green Max machine, as Jill mentioned earlier, and we will establish and build relationships with our recycled EPS suppliers by providing them a consistent stream of revenue, as well as a way to expose or to eliminate their excess styrofoam. And our company will emphasize continued innovation. And as we look for new ways to use our technological capabilities, we'll implement new product lines, such as the interior panels that you just saw, flooring, cabinets, fencing, and other housing materials. And I'm going to hand it over to Steve, who's going to talk about our financials.
Thank you, Tom. First thing I'd like to talk about is our projected variable costs. We compared our home EPS framing versus traditional stick framing. A lot of the numbers that we got for the stick framing came from Dr. Rick Wigman, who is a residential developer and a member of our advisory board. As you can see, traditional stick framing costs about $8,100 to frame, and the reason for that is because it takes 2 to 4 weeks and larger work crews, whereas our home EPS framing is only 3 to 4 days to install and requires only a 6-man work crew. Another huge factor for us is our low material costs. Our material cost consists of the steel for part of the framing and certain parts to support, the transportation of our panels from our manufacturing site to the home building site, the hardware to install, and the recycled styrofoam. And now we're going to take a look at our 5-year projected income statement. We're looking at it, as you could tell, we kind of made some adjustments from the business plan that you guys originally received. This is because over the last week, our business plan's a living document, and talking with our advisors and some other local residential developers, they felt that we could expand at a much faster pace by, instead of just talking with 2 or 3 suppliers of home building, that we would be able to branch out by 2016 to about 10 to 12 different home builders. As you can see, as Tom mentioned, in 2012, we are projecting to build 25 homes at $20,000 a home. We're going to have a negative net profit that year. However, in 2013, we're looking at our first profitable year. And from there on, we're going to be a self-sustaining company. And by August of 2015, we're looking at breaking even. For our initial investment, we're basing it off of our first year of producing 25 homes. This will include our fixed costs, which will be the equipment, the warehousing, and some of the operations, along with the material costs that I mentioned earlier. Our team of 4 right here is going to contribute $5,000 each, along with the winnings that, if we may receive some here. So that'll give us about $20,000, and so we're looking for $795 of outside capital. And now I'm going to toss it over to Mike, and he's going to talk about marketing.
Our marketing strategy is going to be focused on our cost leadership differentiation. It's also going to employ an educational tone to the home builders regarding the qualities and the strengths of EPS as a home building material. We're going to do this primarily 2 ways, with a strong presence at trade shows where many home builders frequent. The most important one of these for actual frame materials is the Crest Expo, which was held in Irving, Texas 3 weeks ago, right, within the Metroplex. We're going to make sure we have a strong presence there in 2012. We're also going to employ 2 alternate salespeople, which is most likely going to be 2 of us. One which will be at full-time in the showroom at our warehouse, and the other will be on the road meeting home builders on the database, the business-to-business database for American home builders, and trying to just educate them on the qualities of EPS. We are also going to employ a campaign to increase our green image, not only for ourselves, but for our direct clients. And one of the ways we're going to do this is through a partnership with Habitat for Humanity. We're going to give each paid employee 1 day per month to go volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, to help build the homes and to take donated structural insulated panels to help build homes for Habitat for Humanity. We hope to promote efficient and affordable living through this process, and we really hope to eventually become the sole supplier of Habitat for Humanity's building materials. Now I'm going to pass it over to our CEO, Tom Sutherland, to close.
Thanks, Mike. We have a real solution to a real problem. And it's a solution that will benefit our company, our customers, the community. It'll benefit our investors, and it'll benefit the environment. I want to thank you all for your time, and I'm going to open up the floor for any questions.
I'm a little confused here. In your presentation, you stated that the EPS cost for a 1,900 square foot home was more than a stick home?
Only if traditional
The petroleum-based EPS costs about 6 to 7% more because of the high crude oil prices.
Okay.
Where because we're using recycled styrofoam and paying the suppliers $5,000, our material costs are much lower.
Okay, so what you have on your business plan here is correct. So you're taking your markup up front, and you're still going to be about $4,000 or $5,000 a home cheaper after you're taking 40% return. Well, that makes it work really well, guys. I'm concerned about that. I missed something here. One other comment that I would make, I think it's a great idea. The only thing I would be a little concerned about for you was turning over your purchase, your inventory, your product to a Walmart or to a Target or anybody of that nature by leaving the machine there. Now, I know how those big companies work, and of course, if there's a way for them to do something better, they will. Have you thought about taking this unit and making it a portable unit and going by a Walmart once a week and taking care of it for them, your own employees, your own people, make your own blocks, so you got the quality control that you need? Because when you're trusting somebody else to do this for you, I'd be a little concerned you might have something besides styrofoam in there. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's one thing that we're have to look into. One of the reasons why we did this, though, by giving them the machines, is because, like Joel mentioned, it's an extra source of revenue for them. They're getting $60,000 a year for having one guy take all this excess packaging and just putting in a machine and compacting it. So we'll have a contract with them and make sure that we're receiving all of the supply from them and they can't give it to anyone else.
And it's also probably more cost efficient for us to do it that way. Otherwise, we'll have to employ on salespeople. Our transportation costs might be higher. So for that was the most efficient method that we chose.
You guys are talking about a pretty radical departure in home construction processes, and that seems to me to be a pretty significant barrier to get home builders, code enforcement in different municipalities behind this. And I know that steel framing, metal framing hasn't really taken off in the home building sector as it is. How do you guys overcome that?
I'll take that one. The EPS is not a new home building technique. It's actually been around since
It's been around for about 30 years.
Yeah, so, actually in our business plan, we quoted Popular Mechanics. One of the pioneers in EPS home building had all this stuff tested for environmental issues. They had it tested for wind resistance, those kinds of things in 1992. So, I mean, this has been, it's been available to the mainstream home builders for a long time. It's just been more prominent in the Northeast because they're just starting to realize how effective the kind of the ice chest analogy is. So the way it saves energy in the Northeast can also apply to warm weather situations.
Do you guys know if any homes were built in the Metroplex out of the 19,000 or so with EPS in the household?
But there's a few existing companies, but they're more expensive. And they've had it everywhere, all over the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas.
It's very prominent over in the Northeast and in Arizona.
Yeah, there's one manufacturer in particular in Arlington. That's the one we know.
Thank you, Home EPS team. Good job. I actually had a similar question, and it's more from a home buyer perspective. If you tell me as a prospective home buyer that my home will be made of plastic versus wood, I think I'm going to have a big problem with that. So does the market really work in the way that you're suggesting, that you create a product and the construction arena will purchase that product, but they're very concerned about the buyer of the home? So how are you going to overcome that obstacle in getting your product to market?
Well, one of our big things, as Mike mentioned, was going to the home shows and demonstrating how durable the product really is. I mean, as you all can tell, the floorboards that we brought are very durable, and you picture a 3.5-inch panel along with some steel framing. It's going to be a pretty durable product. So that's our biggest thing that we have to do, is go out to home shows and demonstrate that our product is feasible, and it's not just a piece of styrofoam like you picture that's really flimsy, breaks easy.
And we also have to communicate the other benefits. It's not just plastic, it's recycled styrofoam, and it's providing more benefits in energy savings, like with the landfills. And so we just kind of have to educate our consumers and let them basically realize the real benefits of it.
I might want to see a little bit more of how you plan to do that from the consumer perspective in your plan.
Okay.
That would really convince us that it will pull all the way through.
Yeah, one of the reasons that we didn't focus on that primarily is because originally we were going to build the houses, but then we realized it's easier for us to overcome some of those perception barriers if we just provide the framework. And then that leaves some freedom to home builders too. If they want to put some sort of wood on the outside to get past that perception, they can, but they're getting a more satisfying framework and a better insulating material than they would have if it was wood.
On you guys' industry growth chart, it looks like you've got pretty never-ending growth. That's one of these. Where are you pulling those numbers in from? Because if new home builds get slashed like they've done a couple times in the last 20 years.
I found this data on the National Association for Home Builders.
Okay.
And also, I mean, that's permanent repair data.
Okay. Well, if I were you, I would model in maybe one, maybe two, maybe three different scenarios where, in scenario one, there's 0.5% of whatever statistic you were looking at, and then maybe 2 times, and then kind of like conservative. Right. Because I think if you rely on this alone, you might be in serious trouble.
What sort of competition are you guys seeing in this market? Because it sounds like something that's a pretty known process at this point. What do you see out there? I didn't see much addressed on that.
The reason that we didn't put much about it in the business plan of the presentation is because no one's been able to have that cost leadership differentiation in this, because no one's done it off of recycled EPS. Even recycled EPS as a whole in frames, like it's very prominent in framing and molding within like restaurants and homes and stuff. but it's never been recycled. So it's always been more expensive than traditional stick framing. So our main advantage is a cost advantage to begin.
So nobody else is doing this currently?
No one else is using recycled styrofoam.
And related to that, you kind of have this Green Max. It's great. I mean, you guys have a good advisory board. I know Rick Wegman, and he's obviously knows the business, and you obviously have the CEO of Green Max involved as well, which is great. You know, this brochure actually, you know, talks about how you could own the machine and actually get the cost benefits of doing it yourself. You guys are offering for $5,000 a container. This brochure quotes $6,750. What's the other primary use of recycled styrofoam then if no one else is doing it for EPS in this way? Where's that coming from? If I bought one of these containers and put it in my facility and recycle all the styrofoam, who is paying for that? Who's giving me the $6,750 to recycle that?
We are. Yeah. We're paying the $5,000, or in that case, the Green Max says the $6,750. We are paying them to
What's the other use then? What's the other big use? If no one else is converting this DPS, what's the other big use of recycled styrofoam right now?
For framing, for example, Bed Bath & Beyond uses it to do a lot of their framed art.
Got it.
And then
I know that they do picture frames. I'm familiar with that part of the industry.
BJ's Restaurants, for example, they're just starting to build one in Texas. They started to do all their crown molding inside and all their framed art too from EPS manufacturers.
In addition to the environmental stakeholder, what real benefits to the employee and the customer and supplier stakeholders? What are they getting from this?
Are you talking about like our employees? Like,
Yeah.
Well, one of the things is that we factored into our labor costs is we're paying a higher hourly wage for our installers compared to normal stick framing builders. So that's a benefit for them. As far as, what were the other ones? Sorry about that.
Your suppliers, your customers.
For suppliers, a lot of these big corporations that we're dealing with have a checklist for sustainability bonuses, things like that, especially Walmart. Whether it's the managers who gets a bonus or the company as a whole benefits well with their stock investors. So that's a big contribution to them. It's just the image that we provide them instead of disposing that to the landfill, which is definitely a viable option for them, just throwing it out. Now they have a way. This is definitely something that will get good publicity for them.
I think we have time for one more question, judges, if you have one. Chris, particularly if it's yes, no. Okay? All right, team, thank you very much.